Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting, May 29, 2024. The City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington's Open Public Meetings Act. Committee members are welcome to join either in person, remote via Zoom, or by calling in. For those who wish to participate in the future via Zoom, you'll find the instructions to register for public comments on the City of Everett website under City Council Department. Please note we do not allow comments of any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. We ask the audience to refrain from clapping, cheering, or booing, and no signage of any kind are allowed in the chambers. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Vice President Bader. Wait, Councilmember Bader.
Here.
Councilmember Tui, I apologize. Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Here.
President Schwab.
Here. I would like to ask Councilmember Zarlingo and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to ask Councilmember Tui to lead us in the land acknowledgement.
Gladly. The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stohuchi people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for the approval of the minutes for May 22nd, 2024?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Seconded.
A motion and second's been made. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, President Schwab and council members. First, I want to just express my appreciation that the council is considering a resolution in support of Proposition 1. I've expressed my support for that in the past, and just I'm grateful that council is putting this forward to the voters to ensure that they have the opportunity to weigh in on the city of the future and what types of services we can support ongoing. So really appreciate the council's action there. And then second, it is Pride Month, just around the corner, not quite, just a few days. And as mayor of Everett, I want our city to be safe and inclusive and welcoming to all. And during Pride Month, we'll be celebrating our local LGBTQ plus community, but also remembering everyone who has made and continue to make a difference in the struggle for civil rights. This evening, I'm proud to have representatives from our Everett Pride community here to receive a proclamation. I had the opportunity to meet with Kevin, Ashley, and Bryce recently, and we're really inspired by the work that they are doing to support our LGBTQIA plus community and just everything they're doing to support our broader Snohomish County community. Everett is truly made better and stronger by your efforts. And so with that, it is my honor to read a proclamation tonight in honor of Pride Month. So, whereas the city of Everett is a diverse community that welcomes and supports LGBTQ plus members, recognizing the importance of celebrating Pride Month, and recognizes the years of struggle for civil rights and ongoing pursuit of freedom to be one's true self. And we cannot ignore the direct or passive attacks against our friends and neighbors who live, work, and play in Everett, or the fact that LGBTQIA plus youth have reported that hateful political messaging around the LGBTQ community has negatively impacted them. And the pursuit for equality began long before the Stonewall riots on June 27, 1969, but that day in history, 55 years ago this month, marks the beginning of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer civil rights movement. And the city of Everett has only been strengthened by the pride and LGBTQ+ community who contribute to the growth, success, and beautiful character of our city. These contributions include the many local organizations that work toward building a future without discrimination, such as Everett Pride, which produces and facilitates the LGBTQ+ events to give all people under the LGBTQ intersectionality platforms for safety, celebration, and fulfillment. And the city of Everett stands unwavering with the LGBTQIA+ community 365 days a year and officially recognizes June as Pride Month and this Everett Pride event as an opportunity to celebrate and recommit to delivering safety and equality to our LGBTQ+ families and community members. Therefore, be it resolved that on this first day of June, not quite yet, but on the first day of June, 2024, I, Mayor Cassie Franklin, hereby proclaim June as Pride Month and urge all citizens to peacefully and joyfully join in the community festivities of the Everett Pride Block Party event on Saturday, June 15th, as an integral part of our city's month-long celebration of Pride Month. And with that, I would love to invite our representatives from the Pride Group forward to say just a few words and receive your proclamation.
Push the little button.
Oh, good.
With the council back.
Now is it on? Okay, cool. So thank you, Mayor Franklin and the Everett City Council. My name is Kevin Daniels. I am the current president of Everett Pride, and I am excited to say that we will be hosting our second annual block party this year, coming up on June 15th. Myself and the others with me, Ashley and Laura Lee Gomez, are here today to celebrate the upcoming Pride Month and to honor a movement that has grown stronger, more vibrant, and more inclusive with every passing year. In Snohomish County, we currently have around 9 different city pride celebrations this year. And just a few years ago, it was maybe possibly 3. So we've seen a lot of growth there. And as a reminder, Pride is not just a celebration, it is a protest. It is a testament to the courage of generations of LGBTQ+ individuals who have fought bravely to live openly and authentically. But as a reminder, as we celebrate progress in Washington and Snohomish County and Everett alone, we have to acknowledge the challenges we face. In 2023 alone, state and local legislators had introduced over 600 hateful laws targeting the LGBTQ+ community. And currently, in 2024, there are 515 anti-LGBTQ+ bills in the United States. Books about queer people are being banned from libraries. Transgender youth in over a dozen states have had their medically necessary health care banned. Homophobic and transphobic vitriol spills over into real life as armed hate groups intimidate people at pride marches, threaten doctors' offices, and children's hospitals that offer care to the queer community. So, as we do move into Pride Month, understand that we are here. We are your neighbors, your friends, your community members, leaders, and we are not going anywhere. We do not want your tolerance, we want your unconditional acceptance. We strive to create a loving community where we are truly accepted for being our true, authentic selves. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin and Ashley. And thank you for being here. Thank you for hosting our fabulous Pride events. And I just want to share with our community, it's not only this Pride event that's happening on the 15th, but we also have a Pride flag raising at the county campus, thanks to County Council Member Megan Dunn, on June 5th. That starts at noon. And then Everett has an annual Pride in the Park event. That's a very family-friendly event hosted by dedicated volunteers, and that's going to be on June 22nd. So I encourage everyone to participate in the fun Pride festivities throughout the month of June. And then lastly, I am excited to be swearing in a new Everett police officer. So I'd like to invite Chief DeRussep to welcome Officer Touchstone.
Hello, Council. John DeRussep with the Police Department. I'd like to introduce you to Jason Touchstone, who may look familiar to you.
Yeah.
He was hired as an Everett police officer in October of 2016. He worked with us until October of 2022, when he left to join the Arizona Department of Public Safety. While working for Everett, Officer Touchstone developed a great reputation amongst officers and supervisors, so we were sad to see him go. Luckily for us at Everett PD, he has chosen to return, and we're glad to have him back. Officer Touchstone is married, has 2 children who are excited to be back here in the Pacific Northwest. In his off time, Officer Touchstone enjoys spending time with his family, hiking, fishing, hunting, and watching sports. I'm proud to reintroduce you to Officer Jason Touchstone for swearing in.
Do I have a motion to accept Jason Touchstone as the newest member of the Everett Police Department?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, motion and second has been made. Clerk, will you take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Vice President Zerlingo.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes.
Okay. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jason Touchstone,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am either a citizen of the United States
that I am either a citizen of the United States
or a lawful permanent resident,
or a lawful permanent resident,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Everett,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Everett.
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
perform the duties of police officer
perform the duties of police officer
of the City of Everett
of the City of Everett
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm just going to set it in there so I know. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Excited to have you. I know the council wants to congratulate you.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you have any other comments?
No, congratulations, welcome back, and no further comment this evening. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Now it's time for public comment, which includes written comment acknowledgement. Under our rules, written comments shall be considered in the same manner as oral comments. The commenter must provide their name and city of residence. All comments submitted with this information will be part of the official council record. Hello, Angie. Do we have any written comments?
Good evening, President Schwab. Yes, we do. I'll read the names.
Yep.
And the following is regarding Clark Park Gazebo. Megali Crenones, Patty Creamer, Henry Cotter, and then Katie Vall wrote in about Everett Police Department and flock safety. And I provided these to council, legal, city clerk, and administration to be part of the record.
Okay, thank you. And then, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
We do. We have some individuals wanting to speak for general public comment, and then some that wish to speak for items 7, 8, and 9.
Okay, so if we have someone that wants to speak on multiple, then we would ask you get 3 minutes to combine all 3 of your comments at one time.
Thank you. So we'll start with Terry, if you could please come to the podium, followed by John Peoples, and state your full name, city of residence, and just press the right button on the base of the mic. The right button. There we go. And there's a monitoring system on the right of you that when the light turns yellow, you'll have 30 seconds left, not 30 minutes.
I'll wait for the
30
light.
seconds left for your comment, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
Okay,
You can start now.
thank you. My name is Terry Ambergy. I live in the Delta neighborhood.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm actually talking, just coming to say my support for the flock safety system that I think has the potential for making our parks, communities, and our responding officers a lot safer. So short, to the point, thank you.
Thank you. John, if you could please come to the podium, and followed by Jeff. Please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak. And press the button, please. There you go.
John Peoples, Silver Lake neighborhood of Everett. Good evening, City Council. I would like to ask you to not pass item 7 and not pass item 8 as well. On the night of July 1st, 1776, Caesar Rodney rode 70 miles from Dover to Philadelphia, arriving on the morning of July 2nd to break the tie vote for independence for Delaware. Decades later, Thomas Garrett, in and around his home in Wilmington, helped dozens, if not hundreds, of slaves escape to their freedom, sometimes with the help of Harriet Tubman. Both of these men, giants of Delaware and American history, risked their necks for all of us in Washington, in this room, and all of the United States. They did not do what they did just so that you could impose and subject us to a surveillance scheme. That is what the flock machinery does. Laws that are passed by human beings in all of their human physiological and intellectual limitations must be, in a just society, enforced by human beings in the form of law enforcement officers in their physiological human limitations. Law enforcement should never, in a just society, be enforced or augmented by machines. And if you must pass this item, I can only suggest that each of you wear a GPS ankle bracelet while you're on city property and have that information be made available publicly on the city website so that we, the people, can monitor your activities while on city property. Also, I didn't see anything in the literature that showed a map of where these proposed machines would go. There should be a button on the city's main website that very clearly shows where each of the surveillance machines is located for public reference. A good day in Everett will be when these machines are removed and thrown in the trash. I'll have more to say in the weeks to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I neglected to include Mr. John Peoples for a written comment as well.
Okay, thank you.
Next, if Jeff could please come to the podium, followed by Jean. Please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Jeff Kelly. I'm a resident of the city of Everett. I am the Delta Neighborhood Chair, and I'm here tonight to support the flock safety system. The proposed system is one that would go into a park, Jackson Park, which is located inside my neighborhood. And I am one of the people who is affected by the crime that has gone on in that area. I do understand the sentiments of other people, you know, and freedom, and I have had questions. We were grateful to have Chief DeRoos at our last month's neighborhood meeting, and he went over what this system would do, and our neighbors felt confident that this wasn't something that would impact them in a negative way or where their civil rights would be infringed upon. This isn't a system that is being imposed upon us without our will or in a way where we don't have a voice, which is where that whole taxation without representation thing, Revolutionary War came from. This is not that. And so as the chair of the Delta Neighborhood Association, I think I can confidently say that our neighbors would support this type of proactive approach to public safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Jean, if you could please come to the podium. State your full name and city of residence.
Hi, I'm Jean Carrillo, City of Residence, Everett, Delta neighborhood. Woo! And anybody here from Delta? We can tell you when the meetings are. I'm here to also speak in support of the flock system, just as a resident of Delta neighborhood, hearing about the shots fired, teenagers killed up in the Jackson Park area, and other neighbors of mine who walk down there frequently, and the stuff they have to pick up, driving by Jackson Park, driving through the upper parking lot and watch what's going on. I can make some pretty good guesses. Do I have proof? No. But I can make some pretty good guesses. It's not legal. Let's put it that way. And I support this system because I, too, heard the presentation by Chief DeRoos and am confident that it won't be infringing on people's rights, and there's steps being taken so that identities will be protected in the case of saved footage needed for, investigations or something. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the remaining would like to speak on items 7, 8, and 9 when we get to those.
Thank you. And we still need to look at consent items, my understanding. Did we approve those? Did I go out of order?
Council comments is next.
Council comments.
Okay, yeah, council comments, thank you. We'll leave it open since. Thank you, Councilmember Ryan, for that introduction.
Just wanted to speak so bad. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. It's always great to see an open house or a full house, and appreciate everybody's engagement in their neighborhoods and Everett as a whole. And I know that we're all here doing our best to row in the right direction. So thanks for being here. I wanted to on Monday, I joined for the Memorial Day event down at the port, which was a really wonderful event. It did not rain, which was always very pleasant, and it was just a great way to honor our servicemen and women that maybe didn't come home from combat. And as the wife of a veteran who spent 2 tours in Afghanistan, I know that not everybody's that lucky. So yesterday, I also attended the Historic Commission meeting and just really appreciate everybody's, the commission members' attention to detail and appreciation for the historical elements of our city and what makes our historic areas so special. So, and also wanted to mention that for Pride Month, very exciting, there is also a Pride guide through SeattleNorthCountry.com website for all of the Pride events across the whole county. So if you're not able to attend the ones here in Everett, there's plenty of other ones to join as well. So happy Pride Month, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Bader.
Other than thanking those who put together the Memorial Day ceremony that Councilmember Ryan referenced already, and including some from our city staff, I have no comments and no report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tui.
Just wanted to thank everybody who gives us comments in our meetings. It's really important to us. I guess my time's up. No.
Yeah.
I just want to announce also that Saturday is the Artist Garage Sale in downtown Everett. So there's over 120 artists that want to share their talents with you. So I would just suggest to be there early. They're usually rolling by 9 a.m. So grab your coffee and come down in front of the Shack Art Center on Hoyt. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogel. I won't beep you, I promise. It was an accident.
My Memorial Day and my family's Memorial Day was spent visiting personal friends that we lost to gun violence who were in the military. So that was sad and happy. And I took my cybersecurity training today. It reminded me of the dangers of the internet. We are all aware that if information is on the internet, it is susceptible to hacking. A good password can keep you fairly safe, but we are all subject to social engineering. Even the best and most trusted people have loved ones whose lives would not they would not risk if a hacker were to threaten them in order to get certain information. People are fallible, and the internet is as well. That is all.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
Thanks, and thanks to everyone for showing up today. You all know that I'm a huge fan of civic engagement, and whether we end up on the same page on a subject or not, I really, really appreciate you all being engaged and being here and being involved in everything. So thank you for coming. I wanted to say welcome back to Officer Touchstone, and this weekend we had started with the Marshallese Constitution Day ceremony, and the mayor was there. And then the celebration continued in Jackson Park, and that was about as packed as I've ever seen that park. It was a wonderful event. As we're kind of nearing the end of the month, we're going into Pride Month. So that was a beautiful Pride acceptance, proclamation acceptance speech. Lastly, I also was able to attend the Memorial Day ceremony as we took time to consider those and honor those that had given the greatest sacrifice in service to our country. And it was a beautiful ceremony and at the port, and I look forward to having that as a continuing tradition to honor those heroes. So that is all the comments that I have for today.
Thank you. Councilmember Zerlingo.
Well, thank you. It certainly was a privilege with the mayor and other council members to attend the Memorial Day ceremony at the Pacific Rim Plaza. I thought it was particularly appropriate and proper that we hear from the new Everett Naval Station Commander, Stacy Withier, Captain Stacy Withier, for that address. I did want to make just one general comment on the event. I'm really voicing a reminder I made to myself again on Monday morning. With the change to the regular Monday federal holiday in 1971 and its general status as kind of the holiday that starts summer, it's easy to view the holiday casually and to some degree lose track of the purpose of the day to honor and remember those who died in the service of our country. I'd like to thank those who organized the Monday ceremony, those who sponsored it, those who spoke, and those who joined me for a poignant reminder. Also on Monday, I spent a couple of hours walking the downtown streets of Everett for the non-cruising part of the Colby Car Show. I was struck by the sheer number of cars in the hundreds as I walked street after street and block after block, ranging from showroom fresh to restored to modified. Some amazing time capsules that I learned are called survivors. These are the unrestored cars. Now I've checked the definition of a survivor, and I see the only car I own also qualifies at age 21. And I'm wondering what that says about me. I too am unrestored. But most heartening, however, overall, was the huge crowd, all ages, wandering the closed streets, enjoying each other and the cars, spending time in the local businesses. Whatever we as a council and administration can do to foster that, I want more of it. It was just a tremendous day. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'd like to also recognize Memorial Day and especially the Port of Everett for sponsoring it. And I believe this is our first annual, so I hope it would continue to represent and do more with that event. It was wonderful. I too cruised Colby, and it was, besides the crowd, the biggest eye-opener was I saw a fire engine that I once worked off of. So that was an eye-opener for me. So thank you. Moving on to administration update.
Yeah, just one short item. Council, you probably remember the temporary ordinance that you approved about 6 months ago to allow pallets at the city property adjacent to Claire's Place. That's expiring on June 7th as planned, and just due to staff capacity, we won't be creating a permanent ordinance until a later date when it might rise on the priority list. So it'll just expire, which is fine for the pallets are gone, Claire's Place the issues at the time are resolved. There's probably a longer term fix, but with the comp plan and a lot of other stuff that the long range planning folks are working on, there's not capacity to do that permanent ordinance at this point.
Thank you. That was short. Okay. How about our city attorney, David Hall?
Shorter.
Okay.
No executive session, no report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now moving on to consent items, 1 through 5. We are moving consent items 6, 7, and 8 to action items. Therefore, do I hear a motion to approve consent items 1 through 5?
So moved, consent items 1 through 5.
Second.
Okay, a motion and seconds been made. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Bader?
Yes.
Councilmember Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Vice President Zarlingo?
Yes.
Wow. President Schwab?
Yes, and thank you. All right, so moving on to proposed action items. Item 9 has been read into the record, but I'll ask our city attorney to provide a brief comment before moving on to any questions.
What would you like to know?
Okay, yes, do we have any questions on item number 9?
Oh, I know Councilmember Ryan had asked a question about the difference between a certificate of appropriateness and a waiver of a certificate
That's
of
a different
appropriateness.
item, I believe.
Oh,
Okay,
no?
9 is Clark Park.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, as you may.
Oh, good. The answer to that is just, it's a procedural difference. The certificate of appropriateness goes to the planning director for him to make a decision based on the recommendation, or in this case, the non-recommendation of the historical commission. And the waiver of a certificate of appropriateness comes to council for your action. In this case, it kind of amounts to about the same thing because the funding ordinance is in front of you, right? It's kind of a distinction without a difference in this case.
Thanks. I guess my confusion is what happens next. If the waiver were to come before council and the commission had either approved or denied the waiver, how is that part of the process for council? Do we then accept or deny their approval or denial? And then what would happen at that point?
So if they had decided to go the waiver route, which they can't decide because that's the decision of the planning director on the advice of the city council, but had they gone that route, had we told them that was the proper route, then that waiver and recommendation would have come to you. It's still, because they are an advisory committee, it still allows you to act in whatever way you want, regardless of their recommendation, but you would consider their recommendation before taking final action.
So you had just said that the determination between a waiver and a certificate is decided by the planning director and council, but I don't recall council ever having an
I think
opportunity to weigh
planning
in on
director with the advice of city attorney is what I said.
You misspoke.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Okay.
I do that.
Then, so then at no point was there an option for the commission to vote on a waiver, that they were only
Correct.
presented with a certificate? And
Correct.
that was their only option?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
thank you. Councilmember Bader, did you have?
Oh, no, I'm so.
Oh, you had your mic on, let's make sure. Any other questions about item 9? Okay, and so the third and final reading will be the 5th, so next week. Okay, next.
Bing, bing.
And there's public comment.
Oh, we do have public comment on 9? Okay, thank you.
So Ed, if you could please come to the podium. Followed by Lisa. And please press the button on the base of, the right button on the base of the microphone. And state your full name, city of residence.
City of Everett. I've been told I'm speaking on 7, 8, and 9 in 3 minutes. For me, that's tough. The flock system, the surveillance system that is being proposed by the city council and the administration of this is so intrusive on law-abiding citizens that, and there is no control over it. The ACLU says that those systems are susceptible to extreme abuse by the implementers, that the surveillance systems are discriminatory and it's understood, I understand that one of the systems is going to be placed Casino Road, naturally, in the highest poverty area of Everett, not in North Everett, but the highest poverty area of Everett. The ACLU also says that these systems are subject to severe abuse by the implementers, and that there is institutional abuse documented by governmental bodies that have implemented this. In addition, this entire system is being implemented with no public bidding requirements. So the city is just saying, oh, whatever they charge, we're going to do it. For something this egregious, why would the city want to have no bidding? Are we that wealthy? We have a multi-billion-dollar deficit, and yet you're saying no bidding for this new system that can be extremely intrusive on the citizens of Everett, especially people in poverty and people of color. I would urge you to reconsider. The other item I'm speaking on is item 9 about the Clark Park renovation and off-leash dog area park. So now the city has these funds to build a dog park when there is a multi-million-dollar deficit in the city. I don't understand it. I do understand the ulterior motives for the dog park, but I don't understand how you could do it when the city is financially stressed. It does not make any sense. And it does put some citizens of Everett in harm's way, because what other place are they going to go now? What other place are they going to go? They aren't allowed to sit, and they aren't allowed to lie, and we aren't allowed to give them water. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Lisa.
Council President Schwab, I just want to respond to just a couple of points, and I'll ask staff maybe to come up later, but
Okay.
on the funding around a dog park or any other infrastructure, the structural deficit the city has is related to the general fund, and that is the operational fund of the city, limited by the 1% cap on property tax. Those are funds that we use to pay salaries. And that is where the deficit is. Funds that are used to build parks or infrastructure are completely different buckets of funding. And I know our home budgets aren't like that. We all just have that one bucket. But cities have very regulated ways in which the funds are coming into the city and how we can spend those funds. And there's designated dollars that we simply cannot use. So the dollars that we're using to build parks or pay or bridges in our city are not dollars that we could use to pay salaries or operations of the city. So I just want to clarify that statement that the funds for the dog park are coming out of completely different areas that we can't use to fill the operational deficit. But thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, thank you. So we're still on item 9. We had public comment.
So if Lisa could please, oh, there you are, hi. Can you state
She's
your
quick.
full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Lisa Phillips. I live in the Bayside neighborhood. I'm reading this on behalf of my neighbor who has lost her voice tonight. I hope that's allowed. Good evening, council members and Mayor Franklin. On May 22nd, I attended the city council meeting to support and advocate for the proposed installation of a dog park at Clark Park and the removal and relocation of the gazebo. I feel inclined to reiterate my concerns and hopes for the park. During the past few years, I have written letters sharing my experiences and concerns regarding Clark Park as I live directly across the street. I have recently felt a sense of encouragement that my Bayside neighbors are in support of having the gazebo removed and relocated. The gazebo is the hub of the unwanted activity that occurs in the park. I have heard some folks say it's not the gazebo's fault, and I have heard the argument that removing the gazebo will not stop the problems in Clark Park. But removing the gazebo will stop the problems inside the gazebo and dramatically impact the park in a positive way. The gazebo is the center of the problems in the park. This is where there is privacy and shelter to conduct illegal activity. We are presented with an opportunity to activate Clark Park, but we also have an opportunity to activate the gazebo by supporting its move to a more suitable location, a location where it could retain its historical value, be used as an entertainment space, and be restored and cared for. Clark Park is no longer the right place for the gazebo. It has not been that right place for a very long time. It is never the right place for a historic structure if the answer is to put a fence around it so no one can use it. I expect the addition of the dog park will have a positive effect as many dog owners will meet there, engage in conversation, and socialize while their dogs play. I believe the positive activity will help neighbors again regain sense of safety again in the park. I expect the park will host positive activities and parents will feel comfortable bringing their children to the playground again. The park is long overdue for an update, and a dog park without the gazebo is what the neighbors want and are asking for. I'm hopeful the City Council approves the proposed changes and we can move on from this issue. Thank you for your time. Magali Quinones, Bayside Neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, John, if you could please come to the podium, followed by Samaya. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. John Phillips, Bayside Neighborhood, Everett, Washington, Vice Chair of the Bayside Neighborhood Association. Good evening, Mayor Franklin and council members. I'm here today to provide information for the neighbors that live in Bayside and value Clark Park as the park closest to our homes. Support from the Everett Parks Department has been phenomenal. From our first inquiries about the fence about 4 years ago, they have provided information and talked to us and met with us on site. In 2020, they agreed to remove the fence from around the gazebo. Having the fence removed opened the gazebo up for public events and having music and organized events by Bayside Neighborhood Association. In about 2017, I remember meeting some neighbors at Clark Park while doing a cleanup around the neighborhood. We were fascinated by the gazebo standing there against the tennis courts but enclosed by a fence. We saw the immediate potential of Clark Park as a gathering space. Its proximity to high-density development within the Metro Everett zone, including mature trees and open space for activities. Some neighbors at that time formed what was called Clark Park Active in around 2018, and we had pop-up events during the summer and during the weekdays. That attracted families and individuals excited to use the playground and just play lawn games in the open area. Interest in active space for dog owners in high-density housing within the short walking distance grew as well. As neighbors, we are at the park at different times of the day and talk to dog owners and other users of the park. Some live in single-family housing near the park, and some live in high-density housing around the park as well. And they use the park to exercise their dogs. Bayside Neighborhood Association holds many events at Clark Park. We have this really unique way of naming them, such as Bark in the Park, Caroling in the Park, Art in the Park, and Bugs and Bloom in the Park. All of these events attract a number of people from around the area, even outside the area. Caroling at the park, one of our marquee events is part of the Everett Wintertide event. We have drawn large crowds of over 100 people and have had local schools, churches, and even professional acts perform in the gazebo. Unfortunately, last year we had to go to Wetmore Plaza because of vandalism. We had no electricity anymore at Clark Park. National Night Outs have been held at Clark Park for at least the last decade by our predecessors, and our predecessors at the Bayside Neighborhood Association also had an Easter egg hunt at Clark Park, which ended in 2020. The Bayside Neighborhood Association with the Cultural Arts Commission painted a nice mural at the park along the wall at the tennis courts with assistance from local neighbors, kids, and the City of Everett staff. In 2023, we celebrated the 100-year anniversary of Trinity Lutheran Church with a a cappella concert in the gazebo because of that vandalism that performed with their piano and their bell choir. What I would like to do to end my conversation is just shout out to the support that Bayside Neighborhood Association has had from the City of Everett, from the Port of Everett, and also just to recognize the Cultural Arts Commission and other City of Everett staff and local businesses that have helped us at Clark Park. They've been there for us, and we're happy to be there for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Samaya, could you please come to the podium, followed by Christina? And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Somaya. I'm living in Bayside neighborhood. So today I want to talk about some safety concern and need for improvement and the correct park. So we bought our home 2 years ago. I was so happy we have one park in front of my home, but it seemed like a perfect place for my daughter to play and for our family to enjoy outdoor activity. But unfortunately, our experience with the park has been far from we had hoped. Clear Park has become increasingly unsafe due to presence of some drug users. So that people made many problems. Especially, I want to count some of them. For example, the overnight occupancy during the summer night, especially the summer night, people often sleep in the gazebo, and this creates the uncomfortable and potentially dangerous environment for family who wish to use a park during the day. And also sometimes that area is the gazebo area for drug transactions. Sometimes after midnight, people gather in the gazebo to buy and sell the drugs. This illegal activity poses a significant threat to safety and well-being of community. And also 2 years ago at the winter, so a drug user started to fire in the park to stay warm. If I didn't notice by chance and I called the 911, it could be caused a significant fire and cause problem for Career Park. And also, sometimes I frequently see some cars parked in the park area where people engage in drug transaction. So it's really dangerous for our kids. So, and also the 2 months ago, I seen high school students come to the park to play. Only I saw there's some people, some drug users when they sit the gazebo area, they offer drugs and alcohol for the kids. So that one makes really unsafe that gazebo until my daughter and her friend couldn't go and play in that area. From the last 2 years, only 1 time or 2 times she and her friend can go play in that area. So I want to ask you, please, do something, because the gazebo park, especially the night time, need to improve the lighting, or also need maybe some security, visual security, and also, if possible, removal of gazebo, because the inside of gazebo is many problem for our area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mama, Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Christina, you're next. Please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak, followed by Dulcie.
My name's Christina Sim. I live in the Bayside neighborhood of Everett, Washington, directly across from Clark Park, within the view of the gazebo. Last week, I attended the City Council meeting concerning the outcome of the gazebo at Clark Park. The plan laid out by Bob Leonard regarding the careful dismantling, removal, and relocation of the gazebo was well thought out and commendable. Also, his plan for a potential dog park at Clark Park showed the same attention to detail and thoughtfulness for the neighbors surrounding Clark Park. He was listening to the needs of the residents, and it showed. It's unfortunate that many members of the Historical Society claim that as Bayside residents, they understand the issues of the crime, violence, drug use, and filth at the gazebo, despite the fact that none of them actually live in the immediate area of Clark Park and the gazebo. One can claim to be a Bayside resident and yet live a half mile away from the gazebo. It's just not the same thing. And it's literally not in their front yard. It's dismaying to know that people in Bayside care so very little about their neighbors. It's not that those of us who live in such close proximity to Clark Park dislike the gazebo, we just dislike its location. As long as it remains in the park, it will remain the hub of criminal activity in the area. If the Historical Society wants to take care of the gazebo, then please by all means do so, but not in Clark Park. By the way, my home is a Victorian-era home, built a full 20 years before the gazebo was erected. It's a historic building which I believe deserves respect, as all of our homes around the park do. For the sake of our neighborhood, I urge the Everett City Council to please move the gazebo out of Clark Park and give it a home where it will be respected instead of being subjected to drugs, fires, feces, urine, and garbage. It deserves at least that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Dulcie, if you could please come to the podium, followed by Teresa. Please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Dulcie Stout. I'm a resident of Bayside Neighborhood, and I'm a member of the Bayside Neighborhood Association, which I'm just going to call BNA from here on out. Hello, City Council members and Mayor. I'm here to express my support for the removal of the gazebo from Clark Park and relocation. So parks are an important social center of neighborhoods. They provide a green space where people can get out of their homes, into nature, and gather with others to connect and create community. Parks are also a great place where people can be physically active, walking or playing ball or practicing yoga. A safe, accessible park, supportive social relationships, and opportunities for physical activity are examples of social determinants of health. Social determinants of health are the non-medical factors that influence our health, well-being, and quality of life. And it's widely recognized throughout healthcare and many government agencies that social determinants of health have a significantly greater influence on our health than either genetic factors or access to healthcare. Clark Park is a great resource within Bayside. Many of our health-related social needs could be met there. The only playground within Bayside is in this park. Bayside residents who live in apartments and condo buildings, which there are many, often don't have their own outdoor space. But unfortunately, the reality is that Clark Park is not a safe place for children to play and residents to socialize. And I understand that safety's been an issue for decades at Clark Park. BNA has held numerous events at Clark Park, and we've used the gazebo. We had the hope of revitalizing the park. This has not been enough to re-energize the park and make the neighbors feel safe going there. And I do not believe that that will become a reality unless the gazebo is removed and placed in a new location. So I do respect the history of Clark Park. I recognize that it's the oldest park in Everett, and I'm certain it was the center of life at one point. I've heard people speak about their fond memories of Clark Park and the gazebo and just the significance that the park played in their and their families' lives. But Clark Park is not what it used to be. BNA spoke to many residents surrounding Clark Park, the ones who are most directly impacted by the deteriorating conditions, and the ones that we spoke to, the majority of them do support the removal of the gazebo. They wish to see the park revitalized as a safe place for them, their children, and grandchildren. So the decision that you must make is significant, not just for the current residents of Bayside, but for future generations. Choosing to remove the gazebo is a positive action to improve our social determinants of health of the current residents. But the greater public benefit is that addressing social determinants of health advances progress toward health equity, a state in which every person has the opportunity to attain their highest level of health. So while you're considering your vote for removal or not of the gazebo, I ask that you prioritize the health, well-being, and quality of life of current and future Bayside residents. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Teresa, could you please come to the podium? And you've been approved 5 minutes, and just need you to state your full name and city of residence.
Okay, so where does the light light up? Because I totally missed it last time.
It's lit up.
But
No, real time, sorry.
the 30-second light.
Oh, it's,
Timer's right here.
Oh, okay,
thank you.
okay. So, but it says, okay, so the timer says,
Once the yellow light appears, then you have 30 seconds left.
okay. So my name is Teresa Gemmer, and I'm a member of the Historical Commission. I'm a resident of the Bayside neighborhood, and I'm here to speak not as a representative of the commission, but on my own. And I want to just correct one quick misunderstanding, but in your discussion with the city attorney, the removal of the Clark Park gazebo was first on the Historical Commission agenda in February as a waiver, and that changed later. We had several meetings with a lot of discussion about the gazebo, and finally in the April 23rd meeting, a letter was drafted to City Council and to the mayor. As I understand it, that letter was not delivered directly, but it became part of a large packet that was given to you just last week. So I want to read that letter that is an official position from the Historical Commission to be sure that everyone has heard it, everyone listening online has heard it as well. After much consideration, this letter is dated April 23rd. After much consideration, the Historical Commission has decided to indefinitely postpone the city's request for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the Clark Park gazebo and build a dog park. This is because the commission strongly feels that a certificate of appropriateness is not the appropriate mechanism for this request. We believe that a waiver of a certificate of appropriateness would have been the correct path. The first sentence of the Everett Municipal Code section on demolition states, a waiver of the certificate of appropriateness is required before a permit may be issued to allow whole or partial demolition of a designated Everett Register property. We believe this is abundantly clear at face value and is not in need of creative explanations. Furthermore, the Historical Commission would also like to draw the council's attention to the following facts. The dog park would likely be an excellent way to activate the park. However, demolition of the gazebo is not strictly necessary to build the dog park. In fact, the existing gazebo could be thoughtfully integrated into the design of the dog area. The city has acknowledged that demolishing the gazebo won't stop crime in Clark Park. Furthermore, it's very possible that activating the park with dogs and their owners will go a long way towards mitigating those issues, rendering demolition unnecessary. Therefore, there's no particular urgency to demolish the gazebo. Although the city claims that the gazebo isn't made of the original wood, it has apparently been rehabilitated in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards as the Everett Register requires. Therefore, it maintains its historical integrity. It was the clear intent of the 1993 nomination of the park to the Everett Register that the gazebo be protected. Since the park has always been owned by the city and there are no tax benefits to be gained by anybody, protection would have been primarily the motivation for placing it on the register. The 1993 Everett Register nomination form for the park listed architecture, landscape architecture, and community development as the three areas of significance. At the time, there was the gazebo, a bandstand, and a cannon in the park. The gazebo is now the only remaining structure within Clark Park that offers any sense of architectural significance. Its demolition would rob the park of a major reason why it was put on the register in the first place. Without it, its historical status would be a mere technicality, and it would lose any viable sense of identity. The purpose of the Everett Register is to encourage preservation of our heritage. Demolition or radical alterations of Everett Register properties are contrary to this goal. As such, they should only be approved in highly exceptional circumstances. For example, if a structure was destroyed by fire, there's an overwhelming obvious public benefit like the hospital. 2 years ago, the current proposal is not compelling enough reason for such radical action. It should surprise no one that this commission is not predisposed to endorse such exceptions. The City of Everett is a certified local government under the National Historic Preservation Act. This is essentially a sort of National Park Service accreditation. The city has held this designation since the 1980s, and under that, Washington's Certified Local Government Programs requirements that CLGs enforce appropriate state or local legislation for the designation and protection of historic properties. By demolishing one of its own historic properties, the City of Everett would be flagrantly disregarding the obligations as a certified local government and would also be setting a bad precedent for other owners of historic properties. In conclusion, we understand and appreciate that the city is trying to reduce crime and create a healthy environment for its residents under very difficult financial circumstances. We also believe that the best way to achieve these goals is to collaborate with the Historic Commission on possible solutions rather than trying to simply force your will upon it. The Commission remains willing to entertain less drastic alternatives if and when they are proposed by the city. And I just want to remind you that unlike in a popular movie, The code is not just a suggestion, it is the law. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Henry, could you please come to the podium, followed by Michelle? Please state your full name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, thank you. My name is Henry Cotter. I'm Everett, Washington. I'm chair of Bayside Neighborhood Association, but tonight I'm reading a letter from a fellow Bayside resident by the name of Jack Goodrich. Dear members of the Everett City Council, my name is Jack Goodrich. I am an Everett resident. I am writing to express my concern regarding the gazebo located in Clark Park. For 4 years, I've lived next to this park and don't remember seeing anyone use the gazebo except as a shelter. This once pleasant structure has unfortunately become a frequent hangout for drug users and troublemakers, leading to several issues that adversely affect the community. The current situation has resulted in a number of significant problems. 1, safety concerns. The presence of the drug users and criminals in and around the gazebo has led to a noticeable increase in incidents of public intoxication and aggressive behavior. These activities create an unsafe environment for park visitors, particularly families with children and elderly residents who would like to frequent the park. 2, health and sanitation. The gazebo and its surrounding area have become unsanitary due to the accumulation of trash, human waste, and the presence of drug paraphernalia. This poses serious health risk to anyone who comes into contact with these hazards. And just as an aside, the mural that was painted on the tennis court wall was mentioned before. I remember I was there that day, the first weekend that we were preparing to paint it. We had to clean up human feces that day. So this is true. Number 3, detriment to public use. The gazebo was originally intended to serve as a communal space for relaxation and events. However, its current state discourages community members from utilizing the park for recreational activities, thereby diminishing its value as a public resource. 4, negative perception. The visible issues surrounding the gazebo contribute to a negative perception at Clark Park and the broader community. This could potentially deter new residents and visitors, impacting the overall vibrancy and appeal of our neighborhoods. Given these concerns, I urge the City Council to remove the gazebo. It is a sad reality that I and others I know would not consider letting our children play in the park in its current state. Sincerely, Jack Goodrich, Bayside neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, if you could please come to the podium.
Hi.
And please state your full name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Michelle Pendergrass, Everett, Precinct 13, PCO, which is where Clark Park is. But I don't need to lean in. You can hear me just fine. So, as I mentioned last week, my daughter is the captain of the Everett High School tennis team, and they use the tennis courts right next to the gazebo. And I tried to get her down here today, but she just doesn't care. She doesn't care whether the gazebo stays or goes. And I just wanted you all to know, like, neither does the coach, neither do next year's captains or her co-captain this year. And you know, it could be, and I told them, I'll keep my mouth shut. You just get down there and whatever your opinion is, go tell them. They don't care. So I know that some of you, and your family, I heard what you said, and I get it. Like there's, you know, our city has homeless people, and some of them like to hang out in the gazebo, especially when it's raining, and some of those homeless people have drug problems, and a lot of them have like mental health issues. And there's the lady who walks up and down our street, as you all know if you live in the neighborhood, thinking people are raping her, and she like screams bloody murder all the time, you know. And like getting rid of the gazebo doesn't fix that. It doesn't make any of that go away. There's human feces on my dog walks, which do travel through Clark Park, but more often my dogs, which they can approach dog feces all day long at a dog park. They will only eat the human feces. And it is in our neighborhood on easements everywhere. And so it doesn't solve any problems. And I did want to ask, last week, you guys said you were going to look into like what the cost was going to be to move it. Did anybody mention that? Did I miss that? well, if not, after I'm done, I would love to hear what that is. Just because I hate the thought of paying to move something that's perfectly good. Although it is under trees, I get that too. Like, it really, we don't need a lot of shade right there. So those trees are so mature. But over on the other side of the park, that would be cool. I just hate for us to not have nice things just because, I don't know, because we have some homeless people. Like, maybe there's policy changes that we could do that would, like, fix that instead. And maybe we could put a bathroom in the park. That would be so awesome. Speaking as someone with a thimble bladder. I also, what else did I want to say? Oh, yeah, somebody had mentioned, like, we just have to get rid of it because homeless people sleep there. Well, they sleep on the benches, too. Are we going to get rid of all the benches? Are we going to, what next? Are we just going to tear it all down and build, more houses because we don't want homeless people to hang out in the park, and so we just can't have any nice things, and we have to go way up to the fancier part of Bayside neighborhood to do that? That sucks. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And the remaining individuals would like to speak when we get to agenda items 7 and 8.
Okay, thank you for your comments. So any council comments or questions on item number 9? Councilmember Fosse.
Again, I want to just say thank you to all of the speakers. I know these are contentious issues that are coming before us today, but just seeing so many neighborhoody folks and neighborhood association folks and the ones that go out and volunteer and really like contribute their time to the community, just having you here advocating, it gives me the feels. So thank you for being here. I did want to ask about that relocation discussion, where that ended up. I think we were interested in some pricing of what that would cost or where it would go to maybe more of a non-urban, not as urban area.
The removal, so I can share that the removal cost is in the funding ordinance, but reconstructing it somewhere is not. I believe that Council President Schwab has talked with the mayor about Harborview Park as a potential location. When staff had looked at like sort of the full, like move the whole thing and plant it over there in its full, relatively large size, it was several $100,000, I think, to do that. So I think we need to sort of dig into what makes the most sense for that site. There is the possibility of using pieces of it, making a smaller gazebo, one that fits the site better, but keeps like the historical character, some features, the architectural features, things like that. Anything else that I missed?
Yeah, I'll just add, Park Director Leonard shared last week that the goal of the ordinance as written is to take down the gazebo, store it, and give the parks team a limited amount of time, a year or two, depending on all the other projects and any council action, to store the gazebo, determine what parts of the gazebo can be utilized, design a new gazebo, let's say at Harborview Park, whether it's going to be the same size or scaled down, but the same design, and then determine what parts of it, and that just takes time, and he didn't have that work or those estimates at this time. But I do know that both President Schwab and I believe Councilmember Tui had suggested using some of their ARPA allocation to support that work of reestablishing a gazebo at a different location. And so the funding for that could be easily accomplished through some of the grant dollars that council has available. But the staff honestly need time to determine the full cost of what that's going to look like.
And I did find the high-level estimate that staff had from February, and it's between $160,000 to $240,000 for different locations. The main cost difference being increased utility costs at Harborview. So, and So we looked at Legion Park, it was 163,218 was the estimate, and Harbor View was $236,340. Moving costs about the same, within $5,000. Utility costs were $100,000 at Harbor View and $47,000 at Legion. And then the other costs are actually sort of some of the things that would be included in the funding ordinance anyways, so.
Okay. And do we have a copy of that information?
I think that Councilmember Ryan at the time had asked about it, so she does, but I will, back February 21st, 2024, so I'll just forward it to the full council.
Thanks. And another question, is it not more cost-effective to move it at the time and not store it? Because I remember that there was some concerns about what had happened to the cannon and that it would just be stored and...
So, yeah, that is why the Parks team said that they would, put a time limit on the amount of time storage, so it wouldn't just be stored indefinitely, that there'd be a time limit to ensure it doesn't get lost in storage. But the goal would be, yeah, I guess in a perfect world, if the gazebo was in great condition, it would be much easier to move it, but it's not in great condition. It needs a ton of work. And so the Parks team wanted adequate time to assess the quality of the parts of the wood, and then also assess whether, remember if we looked at the presentation last week, it's a really big gazebo. And it doesn't feel that big sometimes, but, just plopping it down in another park, it might not be the right size. And so the staff wanted to have adequate time to honor the history of the gazebo, and if we were gonna move it, do we move it in its current size, or do we scale it down with the same design? And they just wanted time to do their thoughtful work like they did up until now, to make sure that they were gonna present the best options to council.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Oh, Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. I was just looking at our budget. This is a new question. And I'm looking at the budget, 2024 budget, page 141 online, and Fund 354, the Park CIP 3 construction, because that was brought up earlier. And in program 097, Clark Park Dog Off-Leash Area, 75,000. And in this current recommendation, it's program 101, which, and that's 360,000, which is what we're looking at now. And I know that budgets are moving, oh, what's the word? You can help me if you want. Anyways, they move around. Fluid, they're fluid. Let's see. So that question is, when, I guess, how did we change that from the possibility of 75,000 to now the possibility of 360,000? And do we have an RFP for that? I see in an email from Lori that the transport, dismantled and transport to storage is 40,000, and construction costs for blah, blah, blah is 320. But is that from Park saying, I think it's going to cost this much, this is our estimated, and then when we go out for an RFP, if that's the right 3-letter acronym, it will come back at some amount of money. So, yeah. Program 101 is new, and do we have an RFP that's really going to tell us how much it's gonna be? And I see that we just got the email, maybe. So those are 2 questions about that.
Does the administration have time to answer those now, or?
No,
I don't.
We don't have the right staff here to answer
Okay,
this now.
that's what I thought.
So it's
Okay, so-
proposed action items, we typically don't have all the staff for
That's why I
those.
said new question.
I have the budget question noted, and we'll be able to get answers for council, but just not right now.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilmember Vogely?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Great, thanks. So it does show that the February agenda for the Historic Commission lists the item as a discussion about a waiver. So when and why was it switched to a certificate?
I wasn't part of that process. I don't know if Yorick can comment on that.
Good evening, York Stephen Swaj, the planning director. I think what happened with that, bringing my memory back to February, is that one of our staff had prepared the original motion, and when I looked at it and looked at the code carefully, came to a different conclusion.
Okay. And then we can follow up later because I know it's a longer discussion, but if the gazebo is removed, the people who use it for, you're good, thanks.
Thank you.
If the gazebo is moved, the people who use it for certain types of behavior will seek cover elsewhere. So I'm curious what the city's mitigation plan is for when that happens and how to protect people's carports and alleyways and other places where people seek shelter when it's raining. So we can follow up later though.
Okay. Thank you. Adds to your list. Great. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay. Councilmember Vogely again.
Thank you. This is a bit of history. The Depression of 1893 saw Everett's budget at $60,000, while its revenues were only $30,000. To cut expenses, Everett turned out streetlights and laid off nearly all of its police officers. A bond issue to fund the purchase of utilities failed, but just after that bond failed, the people of Everett voted 613 to 26 in favor of $30,000 for a parks bond. And I just think that it's very interesting that that was happening in 1893. And the same thing is kind of happening right now, not just the gazebo, but utilities and such. That's all.
Thank you for the history lesson. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, we're, final reading is scheduled for June 5th, 24, so we'll move on to item number 10, which I'll read into the record. Council Bill 2405-09, first reading, adopt an ordinance relating to Everett Park Garage, Fund 430, Everett Park Garage, and repeal ordinance 97-70. Third and final reading is June 12th, 2024. Are there any questions or comments? Oh, Councilmember Rang.
Thank you. Just to mention that we reviewed this at our Parks and Quality of Life Committee, I believe, earlier this month on the 15th of May. So if folks have questions, we covered it pretty in depth at that meeting, and you can find that on YouTube. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to our action items. We have item number 6, authorize the release of request for proposal 2024-084, job order contracting, JOC, for general construction services as substantially provided. Do I have a motion?
Councilmember Bader so moves.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Are there any questions? Thank you.
I just have a couple basic questions. This one was a little bit confusing for me when I was reading through it. Does the city have a contractor in mind, or is this going to be subject to like standard bidding process?
I believe it'll be a standard bidding process, yeah.
Okay. And what is the timeline for when those bids will be awarded?
I wasn't able, so I wasn't sure what your questions might be, and our procurement staff aren't here tonight, so I can get back to you with that, if that's kind of background information. And
That would be lovely. Not urgent. You can just bring it up next meeting to follow up on that.
That's great.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Fosse. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Motion and seconds made. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Bader?
Yes.
Councilmember Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Vice President Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Schwab?
Yes. Okay. As noted earlier, items 7 and 8 were moved to action items. We have Chief DeRose, there he is, to answer questions you may have for these two items.
I just asked Chief DeRose to step forward too, because I think there were some comments made that you might correct for the record.
Yeah, there's a lot as a part of this agreement, and I think even the media has not completely understood what this plan and agreement is, the whole basis for it, it started in a review of our violent crime last November, December, and a notice when looking at heat maps that it was certainly spread throughout the city, but there were some very distinguishable places within Everett that were more impacted. And I think one of the things that keeps us all up at night is what we can do, try to do, to impact that level of crime, not only violent crime, but also property crime, because it's very impactful as well. And so we began having discussions about, you know, what we could do as a police department to best mitigate the impact of that on our community. So we started working with Flock Safety and discussing technology they have that's been proven, it's been used across the country. But the best part about it is that it has got very specific and easy to use audit features. So everybody that uses the system has a very distinguishable ID and login, and we will be auditing that. And on top of that, we will be posting on a website, a public-facing dashboard, how the technology is used and what the number of reads it has, even some of the success stories, as well as our policy, so that the public knows what our policy is on the use of this system. There was a lot there, there's a lot been said, so I think I'm covering the meat of it. I have with me, in case I bumble through this, virtually, I have 3 people from Flock Safety. I have Kristen McLeod, Mac Larkin, and John Anderson, who all have been an important part of this journey since last December on what a program like this would look like in Everett, and how me as a police chief, how I can be comfortable implementing a technology like this and ensuring it's not over-policing our community.
All right, thank you. We'll do public comment and then council questions afterwards.
I'll be back.
Thank you.
If Paul could please come to the podium, followed by Sonia, and please state your full name, city of residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
I am Paul Benz, a longtime resident of the city of Everett, council members and mayor. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the county chapter of the NAACP. These are concerns that we have regarding this agenda item, and they are threefold, and then a possible, just a suggestion in terms of an amendment. I think we all know about the historic impact of law enforcement on communities of color, not just in this city, but across the country, and particularly when surveillance is, no matter what the methodology or device is, and the impact upon it. That's point number one. Point number two, we obviously deeply appreciate the concerns of public safety that stem from the result of this item being on the agenda tonight in the months-long conversation. The NAACP obviously stands very strongly with our diverse communities regarding the diverse opinions regarding public safety and the process of that, and we always are welcome to be a part of that conversation. Thirdly, we are concerned about the siting, where these cameras, where these surveillance devices will be located. And particularly, we all know about where people live in this city and the demographics therein. So we are concerned about the siting of that and the public input regarding that and the impacts of that. And then fourthly is the suggestion of, and I'm in part apologize for the NAACP not being a part of this process and this conversation, but is what will, so it's more of a question in terms of the process. What is the data collection? What is the collection of data when this surveillance gets put into place? What is the collection of data, particularly around racial identities? So I think that's pretty much sums up my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sonia, if you could please come to the podium. Followed by Jose. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Sonia Bodge, Delta Neighborhood. I'm the Vice Chair of the Delta Neighborhood Association. Our board recommended the support of the system. I physically attended by myself. I think me and Paula Ryan were the only ones in the peanut gallery, the Safe Community Committee meeting, and I really love Chief DeRusa's presentation. Super informative. This is I believe it's a 100% grant-funded project, so no cost to the city. Someone brought that up, is that right? You know, a lot of people don't come to as many meetings as I do maybe and pay attention to the agenda, but I pay very close to the agenda of the city council for my neighborhood so I can represent my neighbors. I also spend a lot of time on my way to work, and I work in the Riverside neighborhood, driving by a lot of people here, houses, and I keep a watch on Jackson Park, Garfield Park. I drive by there all the time. Me and a few neighbors have been pivotal in closing down and the sale of the storehouse, for example. We helped gather information and get that to the fire marshal. So I'm really active in maybe, you know, for sometimes in unsafe reasons, getting myself out there and confronting people. And I see a lot of cars going through our neighborhood, cars parking at the park, parking at Market Basket, doing strange things. And I report a lot of things. I report a lot of abandoned vehicles. There's a lot of people going through our park, parking at our park. There's a shooting at our park. There's a lot of people that don't belong there. And they're attracted to the park because there's things going on around the park that attract drug deals. A lot of these people are not homeless. They're urban campers, I have heard the term, because they're addicted to drugs or they have mental issues. So we can't defend ourselves. We spend a lot of time trying to keep our neighbors safe, and a lot of people don't realize how much time and effort it goes into it. And if this can help the police help us defend ourselves from some of this, it would be really appreciated. And we think that it brings a real good balance between safety and personal liberty. And I appreciate the fact that people, you know, think about personal liberty. I read the book 1984 in 1984, I think. And this is the 21st century. People have ghost guns now. Kids drive off in vehicles so fast you don't have time to get out there and get any information except a bumper sticker or whatever. And even my cameras on my house I don't get license plates. But we need this, and for a 2-year period of time, I think it's a good idea to try it out, especially if it's 100% grant funded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jose, if you could please come to the podium, followed by Scott. And please state your full name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, City Council. Jose Villalas. I live in the Port Gardner neighborhood, resident of Everett for about 10 years. And I'm here to talk about support for the flock safety system. Our neighborhood in the Port Gardner has been facing crime for the last few years. And for me and my neighbors, we look at this as another tool that the police will have to be able to take care of some of the crimes that have happened. Not just me, but many of my neighbors have had property crime done, not just to my house, but also to the neighborhood around. What that creates is that invites criminals into the neighborhood who think that they can get away with committing crime. I want Everett to be able to have a tool to deter criminals, not just by having more police, but also I want Everett to feel safe, not to feel that criminals are welcomed here and commit crimes against the residents. I also like the fact that the police department is very transparent to the residents to let us know that they're not going to use this as a tool for people of color, for people who maybe are homeless. I know there's been talk that maybe this is to hit minorities. I can speak for myself to know that when you live in Everett, you quickly find out where the crime happens. And regardless of where they choose to put these cameras, this is help deter. The city and the police, the police is very, very transparent as far as that this is not going to be facial, it's not going to use that technology, but it's going to be for them to use to be able to catch criminals where maybe at the time police were not there. Again, this is another tool for police to do their, to have on their toolbox to help the residents. And I'm just going to close by saying that I support this, and I know that a lot of my neighbors and residents of Everett support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Could you please come to the podium? And please state your full name and city residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, my name's Scott Sparling. I'm a resident of Everett, Bayside neighborhood. I just had a comments, last question about the surveillance program. I hadn't even heard of it until just tonight here, so I don't know much about it. I don't have a whole lot to chime in. But while the chief was speaking, I believe I heard him say that there would be a dashboard to explain to the public or to let the public know what the department's policy is on the use of the data or the use of the system. And it may cause me to wonder if there is a way to communicate such a policy to the public prior to implementation of the system. And does ultimate oversight of that policy and adherence to it fall to just the chief, or to, like, is there a panel? Like, just some questions that came to mind while I was listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes our public comments.
Okay, item 7 before you, authorize the mayor to sign a master service agreement with Flock Group Incorporated in substantially the form provided. Do I hear a motion in a second?
Councilmember Bader so moves.
Seconded.
Okay, motion and seconds made. Are there questions from the council? Okay. Councilmember Bogley.
Welcome back, Chief. Let's see. We're going to vote on this tonight, so there's not a bunch of weeks to plan and prepare. But I guess I'm just going to say that I don't believe that it makes us safer. And the crime has already been committed if the license plate reader is being utilized. I did watch the video from the Public Safety Committee. And domestic violence was brought up, and that is a very real and detrimental thing that occurs. But a domestic violence perpetrator's already committed violence against their partner, which likely means the restraining order has not deterred them. And if they've been able to get a restraining order, and calling the police or 911 will not deter them, and trying to pull over a DV suspect in their vehicle will not deter them, and there will still be jail time, court dates, lawyers' fees, and more violence. So that's just for domestic violence. Movies, local news stories, novels, and true crime stories have all painted pictures of what can happen and what actually does happen. People come forward with video of crime taking place all the time. And I see it for like Ring, right? Because I've got a Ring camera, and luckily nobody's taken stuff off of my front porch, but I've seen it happen over and over again. And I have not yet heard that somebody's camera has helped solve the crime of thievery of property. So I'm sure that it can, and it does on occasion, but it's after the fact. It is not, it's not helping beforehand. The cost is about $250,000 a year, correct? First 2 years is grant funded. Hopefully, the first year is grant funded for sure-ish, and the second is hopefully-ish. And that's a significant amount of money. And it feels to me kind of like taking a credit card that you have all this money on and, let's see, transferring the balance to a new card with like 2% interest for 2 years and then having to pay the balance. I think we can all kind of understand that story a bit. And if it does work, how it's really supposed to work, and it's gonna solve crime, and we're gonna get the perpetrators, we're gonna get the people that have stolen the cars. When somebody's on vacation, you know that when they're stealing Hondas, they're, whatever, it's stripping it, so even if you do get your car back, whoopee, you still have to do insurance. Anyways, if it works as it should, then we will have more jail fees, because more jail time, because people will be getting arrested and going to jail. Indigent defense, prosecuting costs, and all of that, you know, while asking taxpayers to help fund essential services. License plate readers are installed in more communities, people will need to weigh the potential privacy risks against the promise they will reduce crime in their neighborhood. They should also keep in mind a whole host of things can impact crime rates, and while surveillance technology is an increasingly common variable, it is not the only one. The city needs to work on preventative measures, housing, living wage jobs, decreasing the unemployment rate, rent stabilization, health care, and work on alleviating crime by creating social justice so that crime is not the way that we need to get by. So I'm not sure that you could convince me, I guess this is the question, that it's going to prevent crime. It's just going to maybe help after the crime has been prevented. And we have those things already, and the red light cameras are as far as I'm willing to go on surveillance of the people in and around our community.
Lots there. I appreciate all the comments. I really appreciate the comments that have been made by people that have spoken. There are a lot of the things that I've thought about. First, I'll say if it's $250,000 on a credit card, I hope you get your miles, because you can fly a long way with all those miles. Let me just pick out a couple pieces that may be important for you and anybody that's watching to think about. And we'll start just with the domestic violence piece. Part of our violent crime initiative and our strategic plan this year really centered around violent crime. And it wasn't just the technology piece, it was also reintroducing ourselves to some of our advocacy groups, victim support services and domestic violence services. And what we know intuitively from doing this job for a long time, but certainly we know from talking to our advocates, is there's a cycle of violence in domestics. And while your point's true, that in some cases we'll be using the technology after a crime occurs, we'll also be using it before a crime occurs. And many of the people that live in domestic situations, it is that arrest that is their first step to getting out of it. I can't speak to it as clear as maybe some of the victims that I've spoken to over the years. But that's an important piece to at least consider. And I get all the rest of your points. They're all very important. By connecting that person with services, by sometimes making an arrest, it helps families heal. And if we do not make an arrest, and I mentioned in my presentation last week that a large percentage of our DV suspects that flee in vehicles don't get apprehended, at least not right away, that person's living in fear. And fear is really a big part of this whole project. People feeling afraid, excuse me, afraid to be in open public spaces, and we want them to be able to take those spaces back. We've heard some commenters tonight talking about just that. So I think that's one piece of everything you said that I think is important to remember. There are also some opportunities with this technology to assist when crimes are in progress. A stolen car that's busting through doors of businesses, or running down people like you might see on a YouTube video or an Instagram video, or an abduction, right? That's in progress. And those are the ones I can think of on the fly right now. But I can tell you every day I get we call it a rolling recap. It's basically incidents that our officers respond to of any level of importance. And almost every day I see where a system like this could be beneficial to our community. And I've thought a lot about the intrusion piece, the intrusion into our civil liberties, but I think a lot about the intrusion that some of our criminal elements in our community are having on the people that want to use these open spaces, but they're afraid to. So I'm trying to find the right balance, and I really believe in Flock Safety as an organization. They have some of the built-in tools to help me minimize the feeling, as I said earlier, that people are being over-policed. But I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do you have questions for the chief or just comments? Councilmember
I'll take
Fosse.
both.
Okay, well, I don't want to turn this into us against the chief here. I would like to say if you have questions for him. Well, the chief doesn't have to defend all of it. I just want to make sure, I'm not asking you are, just saying, do you have questions for the system?
Yes, it's both.
Thank you.
So, correct me if you know better data, but recently Washington ranked us 4th in the country for stolen vehicles. Is that still probably about correct?
We have a lot of stolen vehicles, but I'm not sure where we land
Okay.
rank-wise. I know we had over 1,200 last year in Everett.
Yeah, I've noticed data-wise, like car theft in particular areas like Everett, Tacoma, like it's just been astronomically high. And these cameras are not red light cameras. What they're doing is that they will register wanted vehicles. So if we have a license plate of a vehicle that's reported stolen, it will register that, and then we'll be able to track it. Now, one of the places where these cameras are going is Jackson Park. Obviously, you heard some neighbors speaking about that. I live right by Jackson Park, and in the last 2 years, there's been 2 fatal gun homicides right by my house, right in and around Jackson Park. And whether it's a drive-by shooting or the violence going on at Jackson Park or the daily issues that we have with our restrooms, because we all want, those restrooms to be available for everybody. This is something that the mayor has pushed for. The council has pushed for because, everyone deserves human dignity. We don't want them using the Clark Park gazebo. We want them to be able to use the restrooms, but there's been issues time and time again with vandalism and blowing things up and all of these problems with our bathrooms. So having a camera that's actually there when people call in to be able to be like, okay, we're looking to see if there is actual issues going on, to see if there's people in the park after, dark. I think that is an okay thing to have with a hotspot area, and that is going to be registering my car when I drive by. So luckily my car is not stolen, it's not wanted, so that's not going to ping any officers and telling them anything about where I am. This year, car chases were legalized at the state level. I don't know if you guys had followed much of what's been going on. Those are very dangerous to have in communities. And there's been so many folks trying to find alternatives to car chases. Because when you do that, it's usually the bystanders. And we have a history here of, bystanders, innocent bystanders getting injured in that process when police have to pursue. So this system here, because we do not have enough police to constantly monitor everything, and this is the number one concern that I hear from constituents is about public safety, the response times. And yes, I know that you are responding as best as you can, but there's concern about not being able to respond and show up to crimes that are happening or potential violence happening, and it's because you guys are being drawn elsewhere. So this helps take up some of that work for you. So when we have issues of human trafficking, but we know the vehicle, but we don't know where it is, or if there's another crime and instead of chasing them, you're able to utilize the cameras that will just automatically snap a picture of any wanted vehicle because it registers that.
Can I comment just briefly?
Please, yes.
One of the things that makes flock safety so unique, and there was a commenter earlier that was questioning why we were doing it on a sole source, which was one of the action items tonight, is that, just for example, at your park, at Jackson Park, you observe what you think is an abduction. Somebody gets pulled into a car, and all you know is it's a Nissan Maxima because you had one at one point, but you didn't see the plate. This technology is intuitive enough that a responding officer can plug in gold Nissan Maxima, and it'll alert you of a vehicle that's driven through the camera area. So it's that kind of intuition that this has. And of course, when that officer uses that, they have to not only log in with their unique ID, they've got to put the case number and what they're investigating. So not only does it have the ability to speed up our ability to investigate something like that, which we may find out is a big nothing. We may locate the car and it was just somebody horseplaying, right? But now those officers are available to go back into service, improving their call response time, right? And we knew it was a big nothing, whereas we might have flood the area with 5, 10 police cars trying to find this car that we only know is a Nissan Maxima. So there's just so many parts of this that if we use it correctly, and I listen very loudly to the words that are being said about the misuse of technology. If we're using it correctly, it really can help our community feel safer. And I'll keep repeating that because that's really what this started with. That was the foundation of this whole project.
And it sounded like you had a long list that you showed, because I got to see the presentation, and I had like hesitations at first. I was like, oh, well, what about this? What about the supervision of that? And the long list of places where it's already installed. I wish you had that slide here because of all the different cities. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's pretty comprehensive. We're not testing this out as like, a per guinea pig, whatever that term is. And so it's something that's been established, that's been used time and time again.
And I talked to a lot of the cities that had it, actually across the country, but I've talked to some local ones like Arlington, Washington. They have the technology there. They're getting more. They doubled their auto theft recovery year over year after they implemented flock safety in their community. And, we talk a lot about the different communities. This technology, the 3 parks are in 3 distinct parts of our community. One's in North Everett, one's in Central Everett, and one's Casino Road in South Everett. They've all had their share of issues, and we have talked to community groups in those 3 areas because it's important that they know that we're wanting to implement this technology there and wanting to hear back from them, and we heard from some of them tonight on what they thought about the idea. So I just think that's important to mention. It's really an application of this technology citywide, but a real focus on these 3 parks where we saw the most violent crime on a heat map.
The other thing that you had mentioned was Amber Alerts, and being a parent, that was one thing where, whenever I see those go up, I'm always like looking at license plates driving by, but not having enough police officers. Obviously, we have a budget deficit, and so we can't hire a ton more personnel.
We have enough police officers, we're just not able to hire enough. We have budgeted for a robust police department,
Yes.
just FYI to the community. We are still working to fill those slots.
And we have some plans for that, but that's another briefing.
But this is a stopgap measure right now to be able to give you guys capacity. Now, I understand there's concerns from the community, and I was hoping that maybe you could address those 2 things where somebody had brought up the policy of a dashboard for the public to have transparency and then oversight there. There was some already built in, but I wonder if you could elaborate on that. And I understand that we're going to vote on this tonight, but if it's something where you want to come back in the future to address that.
I'm happy to come back. You may have seen me looking around when we were talking about policy because our PIO's in the audience, and I wanted to see from her. She's creating the website for me, and for us, I should say, but we've been in consultation as we've been discussing it. We are midstream on the policy, making sure the policy is right. When it's done, we will post it prior to these cameras being put up. And here's a little bit on timeline because it may be important. If we come to if the council approves this and we get into agreement with flock safety, somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks before that technology is up and running. So we're still a couple months out, which gives us time to really fine tune a policy that makes sense to council and to the police department and the mayor's office. And we'll post that, and certainly there will be a way to provide feedback if people have some concerns about it.
I would definitely like that as a kind of an addition. I don't want to necessarily make an amendment, but I would like you to come back with addressing those concerns, in the future as you're figuring that out. And then there was thank you. There was one other concern about the collection of data around racial entities. And I don't know if that was something that was built in. I don't remember that during the presentation, but perhaps you could touch base with the NAACP and let them know or talk to them about what their kind of desired outcome for that, and see if that's something that's possible to be built in, and then come back with kind of an idea later of what that would look like.
Sure. My pause is I'm thinking about how it might be used, and the outcome of a hit will be based on like a stolen vehicle being reported stolen, right? Or a missing and endangered person, right? So I can talk to, I've got the blessing of having 3 analyst positions. I can talk about how to crunch that data in a way. But one of the things that I'll mention, and I think talking about communities of color is really important in this conversation, not only because there's a potential fear that those communities might feel like they're being over-policed, which is why we spent some time on Casino Road, talking like the Madres and Connect Casino Road and some of the other groups out there. But also, and this is important to mention as well, they're also a community that gets victimized more, right? And you heard somebody earlier on a different topic talking about the social determinants of health. That's a downward spiral for a lot of these communities, and we want to go in there and surgically weed out the criminal elements that are causing issues, and maybe talking to some of the other people that are in the area that are maybe susceptible to getting involved in some of the crimes that we're investigating, and connect them with some of the good groups that are out there that can provide mentorship and development and other things that might be missing.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for questions and comments. I look forward to, if this goes through, you coming back with that information and working with our stakeholders and partners, and thank you for the work you do.
Yeah, I'm excited and nervous about it at the same time. We've never had it, so I don't know what the impact's going to be, but we're going to be watching it, and I'll be happy to share more about it in the future if this goes through.
Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Councilmember Fossey. I just want to clarify my comments. It wasn't specifically for you. By the way, that was a very nice discussion. I enjoyed it. I just wanted to make sure that at this forum that it's not a debate between us and our speaker, being the chief, that it was more of information providing and not us debating with you. And
I'm not
as
taking
you
it
as any
personal.
speaker, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not taking it
Yeah,
personal.
yeah,
I just want to,
yeah.
this is an important topic.
Yeah.
It's very unique. And the idea behind the intrusiveness of this has some people wanting to ask questions. So I'm happy to answer the questions. I don't mind disagreement. I just want to explain what the foundation of this whole project was about.
Yeah, so my point was not necessarily you, Councilmember. You did a great job, by the way. Thank you for that. Any other discussion? Thank you, Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. I wanted to mention, for the good of the order too, for folks that do have questions, there was a in-depth briefing at our Safe Communities Committee meeting last week, including a PowerPoint, which I know everybody enjoys sitting through. And it had a lot of really great information about the data that's collected. One of the things that I appreciated was that it doesn't have facial recognition, and it's very analog, I don't know if that's the right word, but it's, it'll pick out your license plate only and your bumper stickers only, and it has nothing to do with the people that are in the car. And so I just appreciated that portion of the data collection.
But not if your bumper sticker is political. It doesn't say what kind of politics you follow. It's able to say it has a bumper sticker on it. It's important to mention. Some people worry about that piece.
Thank you. So speaking of data that's collected, a big question that I have is about public records and public records retention. I know I could sneeze and it's basically public record for like 3 years. So the data that is collected is on file for 30 days. So I'm looking at David Hall for this one. If you could share a little bit more about the public records that are a result of the data that's collected, what the retention policies are, and then how that intersects with public records requests.
Can I just comment briefly and then hand off to you?
Please do.
Yeah, David Hall and I and Ramsey Rammerman had a very in-depth conversation about this. It's so new that there's not really a specific carve-out in our law related to flock safety, right? The data that is collected by flock on the LPR cameras, which is 74 of these cameras, is encrypted and retained in their cloud database, and this is where the flock safety people are probably rolling their eyes at how I'm referring to this, but it's saved. And if we never run the plate, it's never hit, it gets deleted, hard deleted, and we don't have access to it. It's not our data. If we run, let's say your car's stolen, and we run your plate in that 30-day time period, and it hits, that is saved and retained by normal standards. And then if somebody made a public disclosure request on your plate, it would get reviewed in a way that they review any other public disclosure request and decide if it's releasable information, redact what needs to be redacted, and then release what can be redacted. But it's fairly new. So sorry to take anything you were going to say there. I just wanted to make sure I shared what you and I had talked about.
No, what I was going to say was it is new and it's something that we're still working through, but I think the short answer is that a lot of the records that will be created are transitory and have no retention value if they're not used. And concerning retention value of things that are used, I think that's something that we need to continue thinking about, and we're working with the chief on that.
Okay, thanks. Because one of the things that they had mentioned at the presentation was that it is our data. And I see a list of 25 other jurisdictions that do have it, so they might have some helpful information on how it's public information, how the records requests are.
Yeah, that was their words, and what they were trying to say there, and again, they may pop up and disagree with me, but what they're trying to say there is they don't have the data. They're not using the data for something else. It's our data to retain and to access and move into our digital evidence platform if needed.
Okay. And then speaking of data retention, I'm curious about who's responsible to store the data and if this has any impacts on our internal IT team.
I would let IT speak to this, but we have a digital evidence platform, which I just referred to. It would be our responsibility if there's digital evidence on the flock safety software to take that and move it into evidence.com is the name of it. That might make it easier for me to talk about it. And it would be a part of our normal subscription.
And then does EPD expect to add anybody to the records team to help with record retrieval?
Like for PDRs?
Yeah.
Not at this point.
Or investigations in general. I know with the red light cameras, there's an expectation that we would be adding some FTEs to help with managing the requests, the programs, and the additions to the court system and other things. So are we expecting additional FTE requests with the implementation of this program?
Not at this point.
Okay. And then a month or so ago, council authorized the application for a gunshot detection program. And so how is that process going, and how does that intersect with what's before us today?
Yeah, when I came to council and talked about that, it was because we were applying for a Department of Commerce grant that was going to fund the gunshot detection portion of this program. we got word that it did not get approved. We will continue to look for funding because I think that's another part of this package that I think would be really beneficial, is knowing and understanding where gunshots are occurring in our community so that we can respond even before the first 911 call comes in. But not to distract from today's conversation, that's not what this agreement is about.
Okay, thanks. And I guess I have a lot of concerns that we don't have the money yet in the door. I know you had mentioned that there was a verbal commitment for the first year of funding, and that we're still in the process of applying for the second year of funding. And anybody who's done grant work knows that we can't really count on that until, the deposit has happened. So I'm really concerned about approving it today without the guarantee and the certainty that the grant funding is there. And I especially wouldn't want to approve something for the year and then not have the second grant work out, and then we have to give it all back after a year. And So the timing, I'm worried about it.
Understood. And this is where I'll let John Anderson know that he's going to be queued up here to talk in a second about this portion of our agreement. But I'm almost 100% certain on the Washington Auto Theft Prevention Authority grant that we're going to have it. We've got verbal confirmation, and we're just waiting for electronic confirmation on it. That's year one. That starts fiscal year in July. The Project Safe Neighborhoods grant, I mentioned Project Safe Neighborhoods at some point earlier tonight. I've been working with that committee since November or December on this exact topic. It's been supported by our regional group. And I think it's just a matter of time of getting it approved back by DOJ in DC, and I think that'll be approved for next year. The agreement allows for us, once the cameras are installed, 60 days with no questions asked. If we didn't get the funding, they would come and pick the cameras back up, and it wouldn't cost Everett a thing. I wouldn't even enter into this agreement if I thought that was a possibility, but the reason I mentioned John Anderson and him maybe saying something here in a second is because it was a part of their commitment to us and an understanding that we were going to get this program off the ground, and they understood that for some reason, and no money's final, especially when we're talking grants, until that money comes in the door and gets deposited, but they had enough confidence to add that to the agreement. So I'm not sure if we can bring John Anderson up to speak on that. Sorry if I'm cold shotting you, John.
Are you Mac or are you John?
So I'm Mac. Chief John wasn't able to make it here tonight, but I can speak to
Thanks, Mac.
Flock with this. You nailed it head on with the 60-day period. Basically, from the point of installation, Flock is committing to a zero risk agreement for the city of Everett here, meaning that at that 60-day mark, if funding has not been secured, or if for some reason the system isn't performing to expectations, there is a zero obligation to pay any part of the service agreement. We would come install all of the hardware and basically take care of that to show that we are in this together as a true partner with the city. Our agreements also include non-appropriation language that if for some reason year two is not secured, that we're not going to hold your feet to the fire in terms of adhering to a 2-year agreement. We are a true partner, as I mentioned, in public safety, and if year two couldn't be funded, we would work on something with the department to make sure that we're taking care of that and being mindful of the appropriation taking place.
Thank you, John.
That ended up being Mac. Sorry, John.
Oh, sorry. Thank
Yeah.
you, Mac. John doing business as Mac. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think that utilizing AI for public safety purposes is a reasonable approach. We all have Ring cameras, and we use those to get situational awareness when the doorbell rings and it's somebody with delivering dinner. So I don't see a reason why the police can't utilize that as well. So appreciate the Flock's commitment to civil liberties and protecting people's immigration statuses and just the commitment to community and equity. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, as someone who spent 25 years or so working on the wireless networking and cellular technologies that are the underpinnings of this, I'm aware of how technology moves sometimes pretty fast, and we're working on laws, regulations, processes, and accountability for that. And so I've been reassured by a number of the things you've described this way. Most of it for me comes back to what we've seen in other jurisdictions in the real world, because people are humans and governments are governments, but also my sense of our police force and their dedication to accountability and transparency, and you've explained some things that way. I guess in partial response to an earlier comment, I actually have on a camera a clip of my camera preventing a theft for someone who was coming to the front door to grab something and then heard a click and turned around and saw a light for a camera. My motion detector had turned on. No light, just a little tiny red dot, but that caused them to go off. So I think awareness that Everett is a less hospitable place to do crime, to steal a car, to use a stolen car, to bust into something, I think that does help us. I think it reduces crime in general, but it also keeps it, to the degree we can, out of Everett. So I understand that and appreciate that positive aspect of that. I also appreciate the fact that here, as with the red light cameras and the school zone, we're focusing on the behavior, not the identity. We're focusing on the spots where there are particular crimes, the heat maps you've talked about, and that kind of stuff is relatively publicly available, things like community crime maps. So I see this as being something that has real privacy and security concerns. That's what happens as these technologies evolve, and I don't think we'll have the final answer here. We will certainly in this time get a good idea if it works well or not, and we will have to continue to look at the privacy and security concerns. We're trying to balance things that way, because certainly one of the worst impacts on you, just along with privacy, is crime effects. I don't know there are other questions I had. One of the things, as I understand it, there is automatic recognition by the license plate cameras that allows you to select for troublesome vehicles, either by description or by license plate, and that data becomes saved if it's used, but is otherwise not kept for any long-term use.
Can I correct you just a little bit respectfully?
Yeah, please.
The way you said that, I think some listeners could think that we're picking troublesome groups out, and we pick the cars that they have, and we put it into their system. I think what you meant to say, and what I heard, because I've been living this project, is that somebody reports a specific vehicle, but maybe doesn't have all the details of that vehicle related to criminal activity or a life safety concern. We can plug those things in, and then the camera will alert us that that vehicle passed by.
Yes, yes.
I think there's a slight difference there, and I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that's corrected.
Well, and those differences are the kinds of things that I think we're all going to have to be a little more conversant with, because they are sometimes the finer points on which constitutionality and legal decisions determine for admissibility or for constitutionality. So I get that. I appreciate the clarification on that, because that is indeed what I meant. And my sense of that is that allows us to select these, to focus these efforts where there is a reason, where there is a defensible reason, and where we're not seeking or intending or accidentally intruding on privacy. We're simply focusing on the crime and on the behavior, not the identity.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other questions from council? Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you. Can you please address the question about where the cameras will be, not the zoom tilt cameras will be sited, but the license plate readers? Can you share where those will be sited?
We haven't totally decided yet. We're going to work hand in hand with the professionals at Flock Safety to determine where the best places to put them are. I mentioned it's 74 cameras. That sounds like a lot. When you start placing them in the arterials in and around these 3 parks in our community, you run out pretty quick. So we don't know exactly where they're gonna be, but they'll be in the areas of these 3 parks and the arterials leading into those.
Thank you. Chief, thank you very much. Thanks for your preparation. Oh, yeah,
Yes,
one
sir.
more?
I took a lot of
Okay.
notes, and
All right.
I mean, there was things said that I want to have an opportunity
And
to
I
just
appreciate
mention
that,
before we
yeah.
close. If not for you, certainly for people that are here. One thing we talked about a lot, because we have a lot of them, is stolen cars. Some people think, well, that's just a $1,100 car, it's no big deal, you'll get it eventually, right? For some people in our community, and this includes our black and brown communities, certainly our communities that are low income levels, that car is their only form of transportation. It's their only way to get groceries. It's the only way to get their kids to school. So to us, the idea of getting this car back sooner is really important, despite its value, despite the dollar value of the car, right? So I just want to mention that. That was one of my notes. And the other one that was mentioned earlier, and this is me not trying to convince anybody that's undecided, is eventually you'll get them, right? Eventually you'll get that person. I talked about rolling recaps earlier. We had one earlier today where a vehicle was involved in a shooting. We had the license plate. That was on the 21st of May. Yesterday, we found the vehicle. We arrested the occupant, two stolen guns, I think, and a lot of drugs, dealer level drugs. It's a week. And what I What I am a little bit preachy about is that's a week that these people are out in our community doing things to our community members that we don't want them to do. And if we can intercept that person or persons sooner, I think Everett becomes a safer place. And I'll close with that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Great job tonight. Thank you, council members, for the in-depth conversation. I appreciate it. City Attorney David Hall.
Just to follow up very briefly on the chief's last comment, in the criminal division of the legal department, we think a lot about things like factors that affect recidivism, factors that affect deterrence, and one of the main factors that does affect deterrence is the offender or potential offender's perception of the likelihood of getting caught. And I think that is one of the benefits of this system.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, there's a motion and a second on item number 7. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
No.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Item number 8, adopt a resolution waiving public bidding requirements and approving a multiple-year sole source purchase of flock safety, LPR cameras, PTC cameras, gunshot detection devices, and associated services for flock safety. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Motion and a second. Is there any questions? Okay, thank you. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. All right, moving on to item number 11. Reject a bid from IMCO General Contractors Incorporated and award the Edgewater Creek Bridge Replacement Project to Granite Construction Company of Everett, Washington, in the amount of $25,409,890.65. Our Public Works Director, Ryan Sass, there he is. And he has here a brief for us. Thank you.
Good evening. No PowerPoint, yay. Ryan Sass with Public Works. So the Edgewater Bridge was built in 1946. It was identified as a load-restricted bridge, and reduced load ratings were applied to that bridge in 2008 and 2009. The bridge is one of 3 along Mukilteo Boulevard that together form a vital link for the sole access to neighborhoods along Mukilteo Boulevard. And so we've approached these 3 projects as a group. One has been completed, this is the second, and there is a third to follow. The bridge is seismically vulnerable, structurally deficient, and functionally obsolete. Preliminary design to seek funding began in 2015. Initial federal funding was received in 2017, and design was in progress prior to the 2019 PLA resolution. The Edgewater Bridge project, as a FHWA federally funded project, was not considered a viable candidate for the city's first PLA. Council may recall that during PLA discussions in 2022, that the Edgewater Bridge replacement project was discussed at length, and the project was also listed in multiple of the various draft PLA ordinances that were considered by council as a project that would be excluded from consideration for a PLA. That being said, since we're on that topic, the Reservoir 3 project represents our first clean sheet project starting after the 2019 resolution. We're in process to develop a PLA for phase 2 of that project. That process will go concurrently with construction of phase 1, which is proceeding as quick as possible. With that, I'd like to pivot to tonight's action request in that bids were opened in December. The logical question is, we opened bids in December and here we are in almost June awarding contracts, and doesn't that seem unusual? It certainly does. Typically, we're awarding bids in about 2 months or less from when bids are opened. We had 2 bids from 2 good local contractors. Both of them found proposed deficiencies in each other's bid that were reported to WashDOT with regard to some disadvantaged business enterprise or DBE forms. So the low bidder, IMCO, was sent for concurrence to award. WashDOT reviewed their DBE requirements, found them non-responsive. They have the ability to request what's called administrative reconsideration, which they did. That took multiple weeks to get scheduled, multiple weeks to occur. And ultimately, WashDOT confirmed their initial decision that IMCO's bid was non-responsive. So following that, we sent Granite's bid down for concurrence. Granite's was also reviewed for those same DBE forms, were found responsive, and so finally, at this point, we're able to award the contract. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
One quick note, I guess this is important to do as quickly as we can because these costs seem to escalate daily.
Yeah, certainly that, and also, you know, we bid in December, which is like the most optimum time to bid, but we've lost a bunch of time. Fortunately, we were early enough that we're just at the point where we're saving a construction season, but, you know, if we were to miss this window, then we're starting to look at a next season as opposed to just a couple of months late.
Thank you. And so when do we have the original or a planning start date was like right after school gets out?
Right.
Is that still the plan at
Well,
this
as
point?
close to that as we can get. You know, we're already close to June, so we won't be started in a few weeks, but we will move as quickly as possible so that we're started midsummer and then we've got the opportunity to complete in 12 to 15 months.
Okay. Thank you.
So to keep us moving quickly, I'm going to make the motion for
Okay.
item number 11.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second. I just have one quick question. I just can't wait till we get these projects in a PLA type. I hope this is the last big one, so great work in dragging this on and trying to get it accomplished. So clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Vice President Zerlingo.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 12. Adopt a resolution supporting City Council Proposition 1 placed in the ballot by the City of Everett through the passage of Resolution 8021 concerning public safety and essential public services. Do I have a motion?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Councilmember Ryan.
Just a request that since the resolution section at the very end also includes the mayor, that there should be a signature block for her as well.
Yeah, I haven't done a joint resolution like that before, so I'll work with the clerk and.
I'll chalk it up as a scrivener's error.
Do we need amendment for that? Okay, I'm just making sure. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
No.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Vice President Zerlingo.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, moving on to our briefing tonight. This item comes from the city from time to time, and we have a small subject tonight, the Everett 2044 Comprehensive Plan. This is a periodic update and not a full review, of my understanding.
It is a periodic update to the comprehensive plan and the development regulations.
Okay, and thank you. Thank you, Planning Director York Stevens Wada, and we're looking forward to your briefing. So it's all yours.
Okay. It is not necessarily a brief briefing, unfortunately, and it does come with PowerPoint slides. I'm trying to think of how to kind of truncate this as best as possible, but I won't allow for the possibility that we may want to continue it to another time as well. So
When is our scheduled update after today?
we're working on this through the rest of the year.
I know when's our next one?
We have one at Built Environment Committee scheduled. We were thinking that there would be follow-up or items that we didn't get to this evening. And then we could also brief the full council at an upcoming meeting as well.
Okay.
President Schwab, I guess from my own point, if this was continued, since there's a lot to digest, if this was continued to do a part 2 next week, I'd certainly be happy for that as well. That'd be
I would accept that request if we could get partway through.
Sure. And I'm okay either way. I have
Yeah.
a snack, so I'm ready to go. It's more,
I'll bring one next time.
Council President, since I don't have a snack, I would ask that maybe if we could allow York to present and then come with questions afterwards so we can keep the flow going here.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'll honor that request. So no questions till you're done, halfway through.
sure, sure.
Okay, thank you.
And feel free to give me this when it's time to go. Okay, we've got the comprehensive plan is a plan for the city's physical development over a 20-year time frame. It's a strategy for accommodating population and employment growth and providing the infrastructure and capital facilities necessary to serve that growth. It's a tool for interdepartmental and interjurisdictional coordination and an opportunity for the city to engage the public. My goals for this presentation, other than going faster than I thought I was going to earlier, is to update the council on the work that we've been doing over the winter. Last time we came to the full council on this topic was August, I believe, when we set the alternatives for analysis in the draft environmental impact statement. I think we've been to the built environment community a few times since then, but we've actually consciously come out of the public spotlight over the winter because this is a long project. It's been going on for 2 years and we still have another year to go. So we wanted to address some of that fatigue and take a break, and now we're back. We wanted to get awareness up. We're doing a public outreach push in May and June. We're trying to visit as many city neighborhood associations as we can, other groups, advisory boards and committees, and our partner agencies and others. Part of that is coming to the council here to get awareness up and sustain that energy through the rest of the year. The plan is due around the end of the year. We also want to start to build a foundation for making decisions about the plan. We've been doing a lot of foundational work and talking about options, and in the second half of this year, we'll be working with the council to start to make some decisions about the future trajectory of the city. So our growth management and planning framework includes a plan, a map that establishes where things can go, what you can build, and how much of it. It includes policies that address how growth should occur and what the city's role in that growth is. The policies inform the growth pattern, and the growth pattern informs the policies in turn. Implementation of the plan occurs through development regulations, mostly Title 19 of our municipal code, as well as capital facilities programming. And the policies inform both of those. The growth pattern informs both of those. And most of my presentation today is going to be on the growth pattern part, which really is fundamental to the city's planning. As a quick background, we have statutory requirement to review and update as necessary the city's comprehensive plan and development regulations by the end of this year. We'll be a little bit late for that deadline, but the idea is that you don't leave your plan fallow for years or decades, and you get around to updating it periodically. It's a 10-year cycle right now, so our last update was in 2015, roughly 10 years. The legislature changed it, and our next update would be in 2034 required. You can make annual amendments in between those periodic updates. You need to respond to new state laws that have been adopted since the last periodic update during that time. And there is a host of regional policies and plans that we must maintain consistency with and implement and mutually support, including multi-county planning policies of Vision 2050 adopted through Puget Sound Regional Council. That has a regional growth strategy which defines Everett as a metropolitan city with some pretty significant housing and employment targets. And there are also countywide planning policies adopted through Snohomish County Tomorrow and the Snohomish County Council. All of this work needs to be done with robust public participation plan. We are implementing that as we go, and we have an adopted plan to guide that public participation and outreach efforts by the city. And we must do environmental review of the plan and do the work under the State Environmental Policy Act, or SEPA, which includes an environmental impact statement in this case. We have growth targets that we must respond to. I said they're big, and they are. Population, we're at about 115,000 people now, and we need to plan for, accommodate, and do everything in our power to achieve a a total population in 2044 of 179,000. That's growth of 65,000 people. It will take 36,000 housing units to get there. And we must also plan for substantial job growth of 84,000 jobs. If you've been watching for a few years, that number grew as during the pandemic we lost a few jobs, but hopefully those will spring back soon or already even have. On the housing side, the colorful boxes are distributions of housing affordability by economic segment. I think we spent some time on this last year. Each of the cities, the unincorporated county, have growth targets, and there is a policy framework to achieve more of a balance throughout the county of housing that is affordable to more expensive and less expensive, basically. You can see in Everett, a large share of the housing that we're expected to plan for is actually in the 120% plus of area median income. So in the higher end, and that would help balance the city's housing stock overall. Different cities will have a different distribution, and there are cities that have less affordable housing now are going to need to plan to accommodate more of that affordable housing, again, to level the playing field somewhat. Here's our timeline for the plan and our schedule. Basically, it's pretty front-loaded. We spent a year on phase 1 in scoping. We spent a year on phase 2 in developing the growth alternatives. That's basically where we were at last summer when we came for setting those alternatives that we'll study in the draft environmental impact statement. We're in this phase 3 right now, which is writing the draft environmental impact statement. That public comment period you see on the bottom is what we're in right now in May and June. We had originally hoped that we would have the draft environmental impact statement complete, and that would be part of the road show where we would be able to discuss some of the detailed impacts associated with the different alternatives. We're not quite there with the draft environmental impact statement, maybe another month or two, but we still wanted to get out in the community and tell the story of what we're doing and hear some of the input from folks. Next step would be a draft comprehensive plan update. So we have the draft environmental impact statement that will give us information about the impacts and the potential mitigation for anything negative that would be associated with aspects of the growth or the policies or other parts of the plan. That phase 4 is the actual plan, which includes the map, the goals, policies, capital facilities plans, financing plans, and then just discussion and pictures and maps and other things. We are working on that at the same time as we're working on the draft environmental impact statement. Our goal is to have, we're working all of this with the Planning Commission, and I guess for folks who are interested in more details than this, the Planning Commission gets all of the details and more. They don't get any other agenda items to take up their time. These were very important ones, and I actually learned a lot this evening. The adoption process, our hope and our goal is to have a complete plan and environmental impact statement ready for your consideration, and we'll give you briefings along the way, but ready for your consideration at the end of the year, anticipating that consideration process may take a few months into 2025. The work over the winter, since if you were following, you may have moved on to other topics in the intervening time, but last summer, you can see the map on the top is an example of part of the city and what those alternatives that we were entering into the environmental review process. There are a couple specific evolutions that we did. Most of them were in the realm of corrections. We had, you see that's Evergreen Way that cuts through the image there. You can see the frame geography, and I'll get into these geographies in a moment, was just a straight line. It was a certain distance from Evergreen Way. Since then, you can see the line has gotten more jagged. Now it follows parcel boundaries and lot patterns and streets in a more reasonable way. There were a couple of connectors that were added. I think some were suggested at the staff level. I think some were suggested by the Planning Commission. We cleaned up some schools and put them into another category. I think cemeteries are in there as well. And aligned capacity is, we didn't want through this process to reduce anyone's development capacity, so we overlaid a pretty standardized set of geographies and treatments to those geographies. And we didn't want to accidentally lower somebody's zoning as a result of that. We could make a policy decision, of course, at any point to lower somebody's zoning or zoning on a property, but we didn't want to do it through this method. So we went, and that points at a couple of places where we had accidentally done that, so we fixed that. Metro Everett, we had it wall-to-wall high-rise in the alternatives last year. We've corrected that to where the height limits are now, or they're gradated wedding cake style, tallest in the core of downtown, and then it steps downwards towards the neighborhood. So we were able to reflect that in our updated alternative maps. The greenish bluish one on the left is our existing adopted height map. Difficult to see from here, but if you get the online version, you should be able to zoom in. We've also worked on the environmental analysis and the draft environmental impact statement. We've had agency and partner meetings with Department of Commerce, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Puget Sound Regional Council, Tulalip Tribes, Port of Everett, Everett and Mukilteo School Districts, Naval Station Everett, PUD, PSE, city departments, those neighborhood associations and others. So we're trying to connect with everyone who has a role in Everett. We've worked on growth assumption and land capacity analysis methodology and a model, which I'll talk about next. And we are working on middle housing. Middle housing is not featuring very much in this presentation. I think it's such a big topic that we'll probably want to come to you for a dedicated item on that. We had part 1 of 2 with the Planning Commission last week, and we have part 2 of 2 with the Planning Commission next week. We're going down topic by topic to hear some of their input on how we should look at middle housing in the environmental impact statement and as a baseline for the proposal to the council. Growth alternatives is what we're studying in the environmental impact statement. We have 3 of them. The map on the left shows those standard geographies, and the geographies include Metro Everett. There's a core, which is the center of Metro Everett, which is currently zoned for up to 25 floors, and we use that boundary for a core area. Metro Everett Frame, which is a few blocks on the outside of Metro Everett. Urban corridors, which is Broadway, Evergreen Way, Everett Mall Way, and 19th. Urban corridor frames, which are a few blocks outside of those corridors. Connectors, which are secondary arterials that often connect to amenities. You have a neighborhood business zone on one end or the other, often have transit service, good parking, bike lanes, those sorts of things that make them a little bit more appropriate for growth. And then everything that's left is either single family or neighborhood residential, which would be the new middle housing designation. We've focused almost everything on housing here, employment and jobs. We heard in scoping that we have a pretty good framework for it, that our locations that we have for jobs, commerce, industry are appropriate, and we are not proposing to add any of those nor subtract them. So kind of our economic development efforts will continue to attract good jobs and good employers and everything. So all of our focus here has been on the housing side, which is what we heard loud and clear. I was reviewing your council retreat from January recently and saw that the #1 check marks were around housing, where most of you thought that there would be some alignment or at least recognition that that was a significant issue to deal with. The definition of the alternatives, think of it as menu items, and then we have to put them together into 3 full meals, I guess. So for each of those geographies, we have 3 different housing typologies that we would allow, basically broad zoning categories. For the urban corridors in the current plans extended, those are mostly mid and high-rise zoning today. For both of the alternatives, we are studying high-rise on there. For the urban corridor frames, those are generally single-family zoning right now, R1 or R2. We're studying both low-rise residential and mid-rise residential in those areas. Metro Core, the main changes in Alternative 2, we're studying even taller buildings in that core, up to 40 floors instead of the 25 that's allowed now. And you can see some of the rest of the distinctions. So each of these, think of it as a range of heights, basically, that we're studying the impacts of in the environmental impact statement. There's a lot of confusion, and if I would have gone back and done it differently, I would have. There's a lot of confusion about the fact that with neighborhood residential being a required component under state law, that alternatives 1 and 2 as a whole are not legally compliant. Alternative 1 is also not legally compliant because it doesn't add the capacity to achieve our targets. But I think the important part is that for each one of these geographies, you have a range, and that we'll be able to tell that story in the draft environmental impact statement. And we did have to put them together into a menu. Here's a description of that. We've got the 3 alternatives. We will be working next on a preferred alternative once we have the draft environmental impact statement in hand, although there's nothing to prevent advanced work on developing a preferred alternative. It's not going to be one of the 3. We expect that it'll be a hybrid. I think that, and what we're hearing is that alternative 3 is generally closer to what might be a reasonable preferred alternative. And so maybe a way to think about it is which alternative and which changes or aspects of another alternative might make the best blend. We did a growth model that shows there's a lot of capacity in the city. We're a city that's going to have most of our growth through redevelopment. And just because you zone a parcel for something does not mean that there's a very high likelihood that that is going to actually develop. So we're going to need to create more theoretical capacity than it is bare necessity to meet the growth targets. We had to have a way to estimate what actual growth would be. So we developed a model that looks at those, the maps for the 3 alternatives and has probabilities that certain building types would build within those geographies. And these are the building types. So for the high-rise Metro Core, and there were 3 building types for each one, so it's more complicated than what we're showing here. But just for example, you would have a few 40-floor buildings in the core of Metro Everett under Alternative 2. Those would be 40 floors, and Alternative 3, those would be 25 floors. Then here's an example of what some 15 and 25 floor buildings would look like. This is a mid-rise building. That is the Nimbus in right down the street here, and my favorite unit of measurement. It's 165 dwelling units, so you'll sometimes hear me talk about how many Nimbuses worth of growth that is. That's a classic example of a mid-rise building. Low-rise is up to 4 floors, and the distinction between low-rise and neighborhood residential, other than the height, is going to be lot coverage. Low-rise zone would allow higher lot coverage, so you could cover most of your property with a building. Neighborhood residential, by contrast, is designed to be compatible with existing single-family neighborhood character, and one of the most important pieces of that is that there's a variety of structure types, that there's open space on the ground, and it is not all wall-to-wall building. So here's a couple examples of what middle housing could look like in those areas, everything from duplexes to townhouses to small-scale courtyard apartments, which are just a couple floors high. I'll skip that one there. Here are the maps of the 3 alternatives. On the left is the generalized zoning that would be in the map, and then on the right is a dot map showing how many dwelling units we're assuming in the draft environmental impact statement for a given parcel. We've sent this data to some of those agencies to consultants to run through a travel model to see what the traffic would look like under this scenario. We've sent it to PUD to see what would your electrical loads and needs be, or what constraints might there be, as well as our city infrastructure departments. So this is alternative one, current plans extended, and that is a depiction of what under current zoning could be built in the city over about a 20-year period. And this is output from the county's 2021 buildable lands report. This is alternative two, the concentrated alternative. And alternative three, the dispersed alternative. So you see it dispersed a little bit. And I think these are best consumed with some more time than we have this evening, and either on a printout, or we have on our everettwa.gov/2044, the project website, we have some story maps and some swipe maps, so you can look at a specific area and swipe back and forth between alternative 1 and 2, 2 and 3 to see what the differences are. I said we were not focusing on employment. We pushed an easy button for our assumption of employment growth, and we used the Puget Sound Regional Council's regional model that they feed into their transportation model. So when you hear that WashDOT is doing a study about what the future traffic will be with or without a certain project, odds are they're using this future land use data set, and that includes both housing and employment. For housing, we're going our own way because we're changing, and we're changing in a couple of different ways. With employment, we're just going to use PSRC's model. It's designed to be policy consistent, to achieve our growth targets, and that's what it looks like. The purple is essentially where the job growth would occur under this model. Light rail stations and downtowns attract jobs under their framework. Here is a dot map version of it. 84,000 dots is a lot. Our Economic Development Director, Dan Ernestine, has his work cut out for him, but he's up to the job. All of this is competing for the same land, especially on our corridors, as housing is, but we have checked and it does pencil. Miracles of all miracles, I did get through it.
That was simply amazing. Thank you very much. Do I have any questions from the council tonight?
Council President, I just quickly wanted to acknowledge the rest of York's team that's been hanging out with us tonight. So Alice Ann Wetzel is the new long-range planning manager, and Alberto Vasquez is communications and planning, and I appreciate their presence here tonight as backups.
And they did a great job. I attended 3 neighborhood group meetings, and they were presenters, and great job, guys. I only had one comment. At least in District 3, I think the concentrated option was by far the most preferred. You'd mentioned option 2, at least not the neighborhood group meetings I attended, so just FYI. Yeah, Councilmember Bader.
I just assume, York, if we want to get into this in depth with you, you're welcome to schedule meetings with us one-on-one and sit down and delve deep into this. So
I would be happy to, and we're planning to come back to Built Environment Committee as well. But yeah, myself and staff are available and would be happy to dive deep in any part of this.
Okay. Councilmember Ryan.
Thanks. Just thank you, York, and to the whole team. I appreciate seeing you guys at the neighborhood meetings and being very gracious in answering questions and helping people get a good understanding of this very ginormous topic. I also wanted to, for the good of the order, mention that there's the Comprehensive Plan Expo coming up on June 28th at the Everett Station Warehouser Room from 5 to 7 p.m. And then again on June 29th at the Evergreen Branch Library from 11:30 to 1:30. So if folks have questions about the comp plan or want to provide more input or want to see the maps up close, that they should definitely join for those events so that they can have their voices heard. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, I was looking in particular at the example of some of the taller ones, and it sort of blows one's hair back a little bit. I think about very little of that yet occurring in Seattle. But also in listening to neighbors in this, they're trying to the degree they're aware of it, they're trying to understand what it might actually mean. And I'm wondering, I mean, one of the questions that comes up is, do we have practical mechanisms so that this growth and the impacts are shared between communities? I think there is a broad concern that, hey, yeah, some of these things can be planned for, but will they really happen? And if it's a will they really happen, and it really happens here but doesn't happen somewhere else, that grinds some people's gears, I guess. Do you have any kind of a summary response to that, to the efforts, the mechanisms to share the growth?
Yeah, so Everett's targets, as large as they are only 20% of the county. So we're taking 20% of Snohomish County's growth, which is a lot, but that leaves 80% that the county unincorporated urban portion and the other cities need to accommodate in the same way. So it could be that development chooses Everett and not those other communities, but at least they are required to plan in the same way. And hopefully the positive aspects of the growth would be our gain and their loss.
Good, thank you. Grinding gears, you spent too much time at the car show, yeah. Councilmember Tui.
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest that if any council members want to sit down with York and team, that maybe we have 2 or 3 at the same time, so that I think we could all gain from that. So I would be interested in that too, so whenever that comes up.
Thank you much. With no further business, meeting's adjourned.